Great. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining our session today. So the topic of our session of the workshop is about emerging Asia, the emerging cities across Asia, and how new leadership and creative problem solving is shaping the future of emerging Asia. We will try to make it very interactive. It's not just we'll be sharing our learning and our thoughts here. We have a bit of polls going on after a while so that you can share your thoughts about different aspects of the topic. And then we will also go for the breakout session where we will divide the participants in two teams, and we will have our own discussion on the designated topics. Um, Along with me, the workshop will be moderated by Andre. Andre is present here. So briefly about me first, we both of us are from Good City Foundation. My name is Shadman. I'm working as the Director of Public-Private Partnership by Youth Development Program at the foundation. The purpose of the foundation, so this foundation is based in Hong Kong. It's a multilateral development organization, but our work is across Asia, across emerging Asia. And the reason why we exist is that the purpose of the foundation is to facilitate the growth of emerging cities across Asia and other parts of the world, connect the cities to more developed cities like say, Singapore and Hong Kong, and create cross-city collaboration uh, for urban development, for government projects or startup facilitation and whatnot. Um, I would like Andre to join us and share a bit about the inception of Good City Foundation a bit before we move. And meanwhile, I'll be sharing the screen for everyone's reference. Andre, can you hear us?
Yep. Yep. Hi, morning, everyone. This is Andre. I'm speaking from Hong Kong. I hope everyone's doing great in Singapore. And I'm actually, as a matter of fact, I'm just back from Singapore 4 weeks ago. So missing the place. I'm the founder of the foundations, as Shadman introduced. We started together with a few other co-founders in Hong Kong back in 2016. We are very dedicated to work with young leaders since we are part of it, especially young leaders in technologies, in public policies, and also multiple other domains to foster and also bring a lot of thought discussions, what is good for cities and what is good for not just our current generation of cities, but also the future generations of cities and the people living there. As Shadman introduced, we have been doing a lot of projects, especially summits and capacity building programs to city governments in Southeast Asia and also a little bit other part of the world like Africa, like Tanzania and Sri Lanka. We are currently also working as the institutional partner of G20 Global Smart Cities Alliance. And also we are serving in the IoT and Urban Transformation Committee of the Changemaker Forum and the Private Sector Committee of ASEAN Smart Cities Network. So a lot of big names and a lot of seniors, but I think we are very dedicated to really work with young entrepreneurs and also young policymakers, especially the trend in Southeast Asia. So a lot more to share, and without further ado, I will pass it back to Shadman, and happy to share more afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andre. So the whole idea of Good City Foundation, or what we have been doing through the development program called Public-Private Partnership by Youth, might sound a bit complex or a bit too open-ended for some of the participants here. But to keep it simple, as we mentioned, the very essence of our work is to understand what these emerging Asian cities or emerging African cities have to offer, and how we can leverage stronger cities in Asia like Singapore or Hong Kong or in other regions to help these cities grow and reduce the gap between the cities and their growth. the benefit here, or the benefit we have enjoyed here, is that being a private and relatively newer and young people driven foundation, we have been able to tap into resources or get in touch with young people from a very bottom up approach in Asia and both in Africa. Through that, we found that all these emerging cities have a few things in common. Um, these cities are full of young people, and they have tremendous need to make their cities better. They have a huge spirit to do that. And often, if the government is failing, they're taking lead of it. And while learning about this, we came up with this development program called PPP by Youth. So getting back to 2016, when the whole foundation started, we were named Future City Summit because we started as a summit happening every year, once a year in Hong Kong, bringing the Asian and international leaders to Hong Kong and connecting them. But in 2018, we realized that for more impact, we need to go to the cities and visit them, talk to them, and work with them to create a meaningful impact. From there, we came up with a couple of things. I'll talk about the digital platform later on, but mostly about PPP by Youth. So we came up with this development program, which in normal days used to happen every 3 to 4 months in a new city like Bali, Bangkok, Manila. Um, and it might look like a physical event of 3 to 4 days, but actually we had a lot of works going on in the background, starting from learning about the development plans of the mayor offices, learning about the startup ecosystem over there, trying to figure out what are the key industries of the city, what are the problems they're facing, and mapping out networks and resources from cities like Singapore or Hong Kong, and bringing them to that cities to be physically there and understand how we can create collaboration and other facilities to make them grow. So doing this in Bali, in Bangkok, in Manila, in Yogyakarta, and every year bringing them back to Hong Kong to summarize the learning, we had some learning about emerging Asia and the young people of Asia, which is very connected to, I would say, the young people of Africa or even North America. So we'd like to share a bit about how our learning uh, um, in PPP by Youth is very well connected to the very theme of the program. And we will take you guys through the case studies we have been having through the program and how empathy, new leadership, teamwork, and creative change making is actually transforming Asia. Uh, that's actually happening already in uh, often in likely cities or often in most unlikely uh, regions of Asia. Um, so at this point, I would request Andre, maybe starting with the case study first uh, from Bali, how we went there, how we were really welcomed by the mayor's office. We went there twice in January 2019 and January 2020, and how we are working to transform eco-friendly village in Bali, run by the local people, run by the local architects, and hugely supported by the local authorities. So Andre, over to you. That would be great if you could start the sharing from here.
Sure. Thanks, Shadman. So first, I hope everyone don't mind if there's any a little bit background noise because my sister is teaching piano at home. Well, as Shadman mentioned, the first case we would love to share today in the workshop is about public-private partnership by youth that we have done in Bali back in 2 years ago. And we have done quite a lot of times in Bali, actually. As a matter of Bali is the most visited and also most work done city so far we have been before COVID-19. And the impact afterwards is even more relevant to COVID-19. For those who would love to ask questions and also would love to share more, feel free to drop your messages in the chat box as well so we can interact together. But echoing the topic today about emerging smart cities and also the leadership and creative problem solving, I think this is one of the framework we commonly use in Good City Foundations, that we first have been collaborating and also absorbing a lot of, we first go to the stakeholders basically. The model of PPP by youth basically is, to put it in a very simple word, is one city, one master planning, and one industry challenges, one industry challenge in this master plan. And also at the end, digging out and also identifying one project that we're going to incubate. So as you can see, the framework and the flow here, it's basically a bit like how university works out in a capstone program, that we first go to the local stakeholders to conduct stakeholder relations and also stakeholders mapping, understanding first the challenge of the mayor office in the city, for example, in Bali, where at that time tourism is already a challenge, not just even the impact of the COVID-19. Bali has been suffering a lot from the traditional tourism, the lack of growth, and also the heavy reliance on Chinese tourists that time lead to a lot of stagnance and also a lot of slow growth of the economy. So mayor at that time put a lot of effort and also mandate to us how to renovate or how to do better inside tourism industry properly, or even what can be done beyond tourism industry in Bali. So our point that we picked the tourism in their master plan at the end, which part of the agenda is building more smart tourism facilities and also more ecotourism driven facilities that time in the planning. We have conducted workshop there, capacity building program that time together with our advisors, and also recruiting some groups of students together. But on the framework, the outcome is the second part, that we have at the end appoint the stakeholders understanding the problem, such as the mayor office and also the local startup community, local NGOs community. We come up with a framework that we identify project there and also put up a impact fund together with other foreign stakeholders from Bangladesh, from Indonesia, mainland China, and so on, as a tourism impact hub. And during Deeper, we have identified a project that can proxy or reflect the future tourism in Bali. So that is the bamboo houses in the pictures that you all have seen. And through a setup of what we call the tourism lab, then we start working with the bamboo houses venture there. And we have started putting resources such as finance and also incubation and so on. Can we stay in Bali first for a while? So that is back in 2019. But what these slides haven't shown, and I would love to share a bit more, is in 2020, we have conducted the program again. But this time is particularly, so the first year is laying out the stakeholders, identifying problems, and then identify the local champion, what has been done already. And turn out the project of Bamboo Village is where we have done, where we have identified, and we believe if we continue to do projects or innovation in Bali, it's gonna be about this village. So the second year, the 2020, we have done this program, we continue this program again, but this time is very specifically for the development of this Bamboo Village. And in 2020, we have worked particularly with Harvard Graduate School of Design to bring in professors and also a group of Master of Design Engineering, and also survey and architecture students to this village, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. So that time we chopped the teams into 6, and the students and professors are guided to conduct different part of the surveying to the village, including understanding the structure, what kind of bamboos, and also how they use the material bamboo, where the bamboos come from, and also what are the true problems of the village like that. The problem that village that face at the end also reflect the problem of the entire tourism industry challenge in Bali. So out of 6 teams, 5 teams at the end come up with plans to expand the village. That is before COVID-19. That's a month before COVID-19. But one team very interestingly showed that beyond or before building up more village, there should be a more comprehensive use of resources. And that time they adopt the concept of circular economy. As a matter of fact, Bali has a pretty large area of bamboo forest. But can you imagine actually the bamboos that you have seen in Bali, like the houses here, they're actually not made of the bamboo from Bali itself, but imported from Vietnam and Philippines. The problem is the local skills, the local workers basically have a less or lower skills in terms of harvesting and also maintaining and turning the bamboo raw material into building material. So these team, what they have suggested is before expanding the village, let's think about what bamboo can be done more in Bali itself instead of relying too much on the imports from the Philippines and Vietnam because it's not sustainable. So it turned out it really happened that the COVID-19 drive the whole village shut down and this bamboo houses village used to be a touristic site that individuals like expats, maybe you guys like going there to do yoga and all these kind of ecotourism stuff. But turn out COVID hit, so the entire 2020 basically is shut down for them. So, but the magic really happened. What the magic really happened is that time at the end, the owner of the house adopted that proposal from the one team from Harvard Graduate School of Design that they decided to turn the bamboo village into a bamboo treatment center. So the workers who used to work in the village upskilled into learning from the architect how to harvest bamboos and also how to conduct the treatment of the bamboo so it become a reusable building material, and also helping to collect other bamboos, worn-out bamboos from the constructions in Bali itself, so that they can stop importing or they can import less bamboo from Vietnam and the Philippines because of the COVID-19. So the biggest learning point from at the end, it was the whole thing was coined as the bamboo economy, and also currently the project is turned from a simple ecotourism bamboo village into a bamboo treatment center. Well, even now, like Indonesia is still under some impact of COVID-19. The tourism is not really that vibrant anymore. But this village has been very much being sustainable financially and also in terms of their project, because they have been building up a new line, which is bamboo treatment and also maintaining the bamboo forest. And these kind of soft skills can be copied, can be duplicated, can be scaled without much large capital need, because it's not just building houses for tourism anymore, but also sharing skills and as a new type of architecture style, which is building bamboo and also upcycling bamboo. The biggest learning point before moving to the other case study is that throughout which here, as probably many of you have already heard, that we have been working closely with students, and also as a matter of fact, the biggest innovations of this sort of transformation happen from students. And in this part, we're pretty proud of it, because what we have been playing here as a foundation is a platform, or so-called the agent of change, and make sure that the new ideas, the practical, innovative idea that can be input by the students or young people can really work out. That's the first. And the second is definitely we as a nonprofit, we also hope to build a trust as well. So the government does play a role in majority of Southeast Asia development, and it really comes to our pleasure that the mayor sit together with the students that time and honestly share what's the problem that Bali has been facing. And lastly is that is our first project at time, and it's still going on right now in Bali. So turn out this project does attract a lot of impact finance and also corporate to collaborate. And so this is the biggest learning point so far. And before we consolidate more and we translate into more detailed concept for sharing, I will pass it back to Shadman for the second case.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Andre. So as you can see from City Profile 1 about Bali, it's a very good example of creative problem solving and very nice participation from starting from the mayor himself to people from all across the country, all across the world, and working closely with the locals to solve the problems. The village is designed and made by the local architects, by the local entrepreneurs. Um, so this wave is already there. It's happening in places we might not even know always. So that's one example. Another example is also in Indonesia. It's in a city called Bandung. Bandung, as many of us know, is the creative hub of Indonesia and one of the most creative cities in Southeast Asia. Um, when we went to Bandung, we came to know that, okay, the creative industry is a big thing here. Bandung has a lot of heritage properties, mostly often not used Dutch buildings and structures are there. And the city wants to make it a data-driven smart city. So how we combine all these components of creativity, heritage, and data-driven smart city concept. So we went there, we launched our public-private partnership development program over there. Definitely we had to visit the city a couple of times. And then we came up with a solution, which is setting up a urban data lab. In this picture, you can see it's actually a museum. It's a heritage property in Bandung. So how do we transform it into an urban data lab and also a co-working space for the creative entrepreneurs in the city? So the people we can see in the picture, all of them are related to the creative industries. Sometimes single mothers, sometimes teenagers. They're trying to do their best within their capacities, but they might not often have a good place to work or people to get mentored by. Um, and that's why they're not being able to expand much. So we handed this idea, and it got a bit slowed down during COVID, but the main idea is setting Bandung's own narration of smart city. So getting back to this point, that often when we think about smart cities, we think about some cities with, maybe driverless cars or very futuristic technology, huge implementation of IoT and other technologies and so on. But that might not be the case in all these cities. In Bandung, in this case, their narration of smart city is just like this: how to make the citizens' lives better, and adding a bit of data element to it. That's it. Getting back to Andres sharing, Bali's plan was Bali beyond tourism. So how to diversify the industries beyond tourism. So if tourism fails, Bali can survive. So that's a great example of how we have been seeing a very bottom-up approach during the public-private partnership programs and creative problem solving all the way, and new leadership. By new leadership, I'd like to define it as a leadership where a random foreigner can go to a city and the mayors are so open to have conversation that they really sign deals or they really endorse the organizations to work together to make the city better. It might be a fantasy in different parts of the world, but it's actually happening in Asia, in emerging Asia already. From Bandung's example, we would like to go a bit deep about collaboration we did. And obviously for change making, there's no such thing like collaboration. This drives the whole process. So when we went to Bandung, we brought in a couple of stakeholders from obviously from Indonesia, from Singapore, and from the Philippines. So before that, I'd like to share that there are a lot of ideal properties in Bandung. Uh, one of these is the Urban Data Lab. So we will be working to transform these unused heritage buildings and use an alliance, as you see, the Garuda Digital Alliance. It's an alliance of an affordable housing company from Indonesia connected to a fintech company from the Philippines and internet service provider. So combining all this, how do we make people's life better by giving them affordable house, uh, access to finance through fintech, and access to affordable internet. And combining all this, how do we make life better for the people? So this particular uh, line might not share the whole idea, but the idea is as simple as that. How do we understand what these cities have to offer? What are the problems, and how we use collaboration to come up with a solution? And as you can see that the public-private partnership youth programs are not just focusing on the discussion. We are mapping framework and giving this a shape. So how do we creatively solve the problems of emerging Asia? So talking about the Garuda Digital Alliance, this alliance was also signed in Bandung together with the government and the stakeholders I just mentioned. Um, and it's going to transform a huge community in Indonesia, and especially in a suburb of Jakarta in Bekasi. Uh, so that's a project we have been working on. So in the foundation, as you see, we have a very interesting approach of what we call the double funnel development model, where we often zoom in to a city and focus on the smallest problems of the city or the smallest struggles of the government. But then we often zoom out and see how we can create an ecosystem of people, of institutions across Asia, uh, and put it together in one network, what we call the Emerging Future Cities Network. So for a matter of fact, when we do any program or we step into a new city, we always try to sign agreement within the stakeholders, within the young people, so that we can work together for creating a change. And interestingly, every time we have, in one hand, we have people like the mayors or representatives from international development organizations, but also local young people, local youth who are also solving the problems of their cities and trying to make the cities better. So taking that, I'd like to share a bit about the ecosystem. So the PPP by Youth is a program through which we learn about the cities, bring in the projects, as Andre and I have been mentioning. The foundation itself is there, and the PPP by Youth program is part of the foundation. Our annual meetup in Hong Kong, which is the main purpose, is to summarize the learning, where we bring in all these change makers and often the mayors to Hong Kong to summarize their development progress and share the challenges they're facing and use collaboration to make this easier. And we're also stepping into ventures platform. We have our in-house venture platform, which helps to finance some of these champion projects and mobilize financial resources. So talking about all this, I think it's a time when we would get more interactive. I think Andre and I have shared a bit about some of the city profiles and connected it to the theme of the uh, workshop and the overall summit over here. So I'd like to go for a bit of polling right now. And I'd like to see what the audience think about different perspective. And from there, we will go to the breakout session. So based on the polling and the results, we will discuss more there. And we will come back and have a Q&A session where we will be keeping it open for anyone to speak, raise any question, or have further discussion. So I would request, I'll just take a few minutes to do it. Um, just So here in the chat box, I'm putting the first question of the poll. It's open for everyone to respond to. And here we would like to know one question, which is, sorry. So the first question or the first polling we would like to hear about is, how would you evaluate the scopes of practicing new leadership and creative problem solving in emerging Asian cities? Is it strongly present already? From your experience, feel free to put your own thoughts here. Are we slowly going towards the practices? We are not yet working towards it at all, uh, or there's no scope or no hope in the future as well. So yeah, the poll will show the results real time, uh, and we would take a minute or so to get everyone answered. I think we will take like 10 seconds to end this poll and move to the next. Great. So I'll be moving to the next one. So the result is 60%, 6% think it strongly exists in Asia, emerging Asia already. And the most of the crowd thinks we are slowly going towards such practices. And I personally would say I'd go with the majority. From our experience, I'd say we are actually going towards that. Um, so I will be sharing another link. Okay, seems like we have already answered it. Uh, Great. Sorry about that. Okay, so the second question has already been answered. That is about what are the key barriers in terms of practicing such qualities. Um, Sorry. Yeah. So 21% thinks the culture is not always open towards new changes. So there's a bit to do with the culture over here. 50%, half of the participants think the policy and the governance system is very top down. Um, and almost 19% think the education system does not teach such qualities often. Qualities like new leadership or creative change making and so on. Even if we have it, maybe not so much of a practical use is there. And there might be some barriers, but we are going towards practicing these. Yes, there are changes happening where the young people are taking leadership to make this happen. And the third question was how new leadership and creative problem solving is essential uh, for the future of emerging Asia. What are the factors behind? So 20% think because we have to build a bottom-up approach of development. Yes, as it's very top-down. For actual problem solving, the voices should be heard. 6% think because emerging Asian problems require Asian solutions. 6%, the old system has been highly bureaucratic and top down. And I believe pretty much all of us agree that all these factors play a role over here. So, talking about this, I think we have most of us have a common idea, or we agree in most of the points. 94% in the first point, almost 50% in the second point, and 72% in the third point. Um, so, right now, I think I would request she to help us and divide us into breakout rooms for the session here. Um, so in the breakout rooms, we will have two rooms. So pretty much we discussed from the very beginning about the case studies, the sharing and learning from me and Andre. And we did a bit of polling, and I think we have pretty much a good agreement on some of these topics. But I believe a discussion will be more helpful. So we will take like 10 minutes, for your reference, and we will divide the participants in two teams. So one team, breakout room one, will talk about empathy and new leadership. So I'll break it down a little bit that um, from your experience, what are the places you have seen there's a good scope of practicing new leadership, some experiences you had, um, why you think empathy is important, not just in a personal level, also in a more collective way. Um, and feel free to share more about it. And second team would talk about the importance of teamwork and creative change making, again, for a better personal life for their own country and cities, and in a collective way for overall Asia. What are the challenges in these cases? And what would be their hope for the future, or the room for development to make this happen? So, Shi, are we good to share the rooms? Great. So we will be joining the rooms, and we will see each other in a bit in the rooms. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I'd like to learn more from that point, Andre. That in the breakout session, we had a very detailed discussion from this team as well. So I think the debrief session is very open to everyone to kind of continue the conversation we were having, or maybe Andre, if you'd like to share some of the interesting findings from your team's discussion in the breakout, or nominate anyone to share here. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you.
Well, I mean, I've lived in Singapore for 2 years, and we just have some sharing from Nicole, from Hui Hui, and also from Serena talking about their experience as well. And I really like their questions. And Singapore has indeed a very unique. I will respond or summarize all of our discussion this way. I've lived in Singapore for 2 years because of my scholarship masters in the Kuan Yu School, and Singapore has a very well documented way to documentations what Singapore the past 50 plus years have done building up their cities and solving their problems, and that is mostly done, I would say, and I've learned from Center of Livable Cities in Singapore. And this is something I personally, I mean, as an outsider, I think this is a treasure of the country, that how a government put a lot of effort documentationing their problem solving into such a framework, which even Hong Kong and many other well-advanced cities or countries haven't done yet. So as an organization, we have learned a lot from CLC, and also learned a lot from the way Singapore solve problems. To summarize a little bit, the all the questions and also dialogue we had in my part here is, I would use a Singaporean term again. I mean, there's a term I've learned from my school called a strong political will. We are a nonprofit, we are non-governmental, but I think what I mean by strong political will is how we have mentioned a lot, Shadman and I mentioned a lot working with the city governments, because we believe in Southeast Asia, or in many problems in Asia, it cannot be solely solved by entrepreneurship. It cannot be solely solved by social entrepreneurs as well. It takes government role to play the right policies and also the right implementations, governance and regulations. So how we work with administrators really play a big role. The way we pick cities, like Serena asked about why we picked Bali in the first place. We realized that Bali, the mayor and the public sectors are very open and very entrepreneurial. Well, first is definitely because Bali has been hosting a lot of international events, so that's built the culture of the people. Even the administrators are very open-minded to work. So I think that values really help us to pick the right cities to go. And when we start learning from those right cities, it also creates sort of side effects or ripple effect that other cities, other second tier or third tier cities would also like to try. So now, for example, we have done these kind of program in Bali and Bandung, those relatively more international or open cities. And then now our cases have been shared quite some time to other occasions as well. So other less hurt cities like Yogyakarta or Semarang, or even like some others in Indonesia, they would be approaching us, and also they would try to learn what we really are about, and we did our best to communicate. So while we learn empathy to the problems, we also put ourselves into the city administrator. What do they care, so that we can really work things out. We usually try to ensure that we are not just working with the local stakeholders. In this kind of collective team management, we do also make sure they learn something from us and also learn something from our partners, such as the World Bank and the Work Forum. And then they feel this is a necessity for them to move forward that way together. So lastly, to wrap up my part, I think, and also Serena asked about, I think Serena or Hui asked about measuring the impact. Yeah, Hui asked about the impact. We have our impact reporting every program. First of all, we measure how we, the PPP by youth itself is a program. So the measurement in the program is very simple. It's usually what is the key takeaways that we have conveyed in the program, how many people attend, how many civic administrators, how many kinds of people join this program. It's very basic metrics. But at the same time, we also care about conversions. Conversion means, okay, this is a program, few days program. At the end, it's an event, but how we convert the value from event-based projects into somewhere that we can work more, such as what Shadman mentioned, venture building. So from a less than 100 people program converted to a group of stakeholders that Shadman also mentioned, like working a group of stakeholders. So in terms of numbers, for example, like let's say 80 people in the program, and then we have identified around less than 10 people who are mayor office representative, the project owner, the NGO, key NGO partner, university partner, startup community, and so on. These in total less than 10 people. And then out of these less than 10 people, we identify one, which is the project owner, the project champion owner. And this one project champion owner, we're gonna convert into our portfolio for venture building. And then in this part of venture building, how much value we're gonna give them. And we break down the value into finance, into impact, and maybe corporate partnership and their exposures to the global market. So are we raising funds for them? Are we putting our own finance to them? Are we putting them into more global corporates so they can grow their business? Are we also inviting them to some of the other occasions that we can do? For example, we are working with the Work Forum, so we usually also invite a few projects to share about their cases back in Bali or other places. And then there will be another chain of conversion in these exposures for them to, let's say, to the work. Then are they also gaining something else? So we keep So it's like horizontally, you can imagine it's like chains of conversions of values. And that's kind of our mindset, how we design works, and also how we measure at the end. It can be numbers, it can be money, it can be exposures, and so on. So and we use this chain of value to also understand, to justify, are we doing the right thing? That's part of our empathy, I would say. Are we that use that we use that for justifying, are we doing the right thing on the ground? Or turn out, if the chain is too short, we can't convert any value, then we decide this is kind of useless. We shouldn't do this work on the ground. So that is, the longer the chain that we can imagine in design, that means the wider scope of stakeholders and the team that we can do together. So that echo at the end, justifying our empathy value and also the collective teamwork. So a bit long, but that's wrapping up what we have discussed. And I will pass it back to you, Shadman.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Andre. And here in Team B, we talked about creative problem solving and teamwork. Some pretty different perspectives from Singapore, from the Philippines. In Singapore, there have been a lot of initiatives uh, around the built environment aspect of the city, to make cities greener, to make cities more livable, um, reducing carbon emissions. On the other hand, obviously, technology is there in Singapore already, but technology adoption is a bit of a challenge, especially among the older generations who are not so tech savvy. So there is a challenge of getting them accustomed to the new technology. Secondly, would be a lot of businesses are struggling to transform. So that's where the challenge of creative problem solving is there, which is lack of digital literacy, even in Singapore among the uh, older generations, or let's say does a street vendor convert or a food cart convert itself into a cloud kitchen. So that's a struggle because of the last barrier is there of how to do it. Um, and then we also get a very different perspective from the Philippines, where um, obviously the Philippines is um, the people have the spirit of, not all the problems will be solved by the government. The teamwork should start from the very community level, and people should drive the change and take it upwards from here and onwards to solve the problems. And yeah, I think the very fundamental change method of the Philippines, or I would say in many parts of emerging Asia, would be starting from a very bottom-up approach. And that makes us very clear that teamwork or change making not always starts from the government side, especially from emerging Asia. It has to start from a very community level, uh, and cross learning. So how a fellow Filipino can learn from a fellow Indonesian and a fellow Singaporean, and create solutions that are broader than what they have thought before. Um, and another perspective was teamwork in a very organizational level as well. So how do we think about, say, cities as a startup, and work as a team to make it better, or a nation as a startup to make it better? Um, be always open for feedback or criticism and whatnot, and make things happen. So in these cases, what we can see, to summarize, that for new leadership or for creative change making, there are barriers, like from the mindset to technological tech learning or digital literacy, uh, to kind of not being sure whether the government is going to solve it or the people. So these are some of the challenges being addressed in Team B. And I'd like to keep the floor open for anyone to come in, ask any question, starting from the very beginning, anything that has been not so clear to you during our sharing, or any feedback you'd like to share, or any wish you have for the future of Asia. In Good City Foundation, we are very passionate about the future as well. So maybe if you are bold enough, what would you like to see in the future happening in your city or in your country? So yeah, I'll stay silent at this moment, and I'll give the lead to the participants to jump in and share your ideas.
Well, I'm curious. Probably the audience can also speak up. It's a bilateral Q&A, so I'm curious. We have a lot of Singaporean friends here. I'm curious about how. Well, I feel like, I mean, with my experience living in Singapore, government definitely play and has done a lot, and I'm curious how, for example, the Green Plan itself in Singapore, and also social innovation or social entrepreneurship, these sort of ideas or these sort of concepts, how the local players or how the local say citizens or how the local communities are doing their own role right now. In Hong Kong, it's very decentralized, and also it's very bottom up. Like, I mean, the very big difference is, first of all, Hong Kong community, local community, still doesn't truly have a sincere trust with the government, as you all may have known. It's quite opposite to the Singapore in some sense. So what does the local community in Singapore plays or position themselves when Singaporean government has done a big role already? Anyone who can, feel free to volunteer yourself to answer or echo your opinion.
Hello, my name is Han. Just checking whether you can hear me.
Hello.
Hey, Han, we can hear. Yeah.
Yeah, so I work at the Singapore Management University. So we do come across many youths who come to university. And what I've noticed also in general is there's been a growing ground up movement, much more grassroots movement. And this is quite a bit of a historical change, right, from what is typically a top-down approach in Singapore. Whereas I think perhaps in cities like Hong Kong, there's a much stronger ground-up movement beginning in the first. So just very briefly, I realized that there are a lot of smaller groups that are doing really great stuff in different communities, in different areas, different topics. But perhaps what seems to be lacking is some sort of convening force or a connector so that we can be a bit more coordinated in that sense. Because there are cases of duplication, and then there are some blind spots where people don't realize that there are no resources or no groups serving in those areas. And I wonder if having some of these connecting organizations or groups would also strengthen that ground up movement.
Yeah, indeed. But before I share my thoughts, others Singaporean fellows, your own opinion or your own comments with what Han said? Well, I personally think yes, I mean, I can't share too much about Singapore. I've just lived there for 2 years. I think probably yes. I echo what you said, Hans. But in Hong Kong, in Hong Kong, for example, the way we try to make sure jobs or impacts are not redundant, or I think what you probably mean is towards the same problem. There are quite a number of, for example, social enterprises or social entrepreneurs who are doing quite the same thing, but their efforts are not aggregate, or their efforts are not put together in a scalable manner. So we quite face the same problem that there are many local communities trying to solve, for example, poverty issues in particular district in Hong Kong, particular few very poor area in Hong Kong, say Sunshine Po or others. And then a few other districts in Hong Kong would be left behind because maybe the policy resources are not there. They are not the top priority of what government or what the resources try to address. Then the social entrepreneurs would not like to go there because they can't get any grants or they can't get any resources in those districts. And then like many social entrepreneurs just pull in one same district in Hong Kong because that district attract a lot of policy resources as well. It's kind of like the fish going to a particular area of the pond because there are more food there. But I think on top of that, what Hong Kong has been doing is that I think the structure would be quite the environment or the atmosphere or the structure of Hong Kong social innovations or social entrepreneurship would be quite similar to what Bangladesh that Shadman can share later. We have a few big sectors that try to aggregate all these together and make sure the effort are not really too much redundant, or at least the resources can be more effectively distributed. So there are a few aggregators, such as the Social Enterprise Summit in Hong Kong, and also they have a big team of secretariat managing the database and also managing managing policy informations, policy resources, a few funding schemes, major funding schemes that social innovators usually come to, and also a big database of social entrepreneurs and what they're doing. So it's a little bit semi-government agent to make sure the social innovators can go to the right place in a society, making sure not too many social innovators concentrate in one place only, or quite unevenly distributed. So I think I take your point, and I think this is the sort of another challenge we face in Hong Kong as well. But on the other hand, there are also this kind of example going on. But still, the problem that you mentioned in Singapore is still quite happening in Hong Kong as well. I think there are also some similar agents, maybe like Rise Singapore. I'm not sure if they're doing the same thing. But yeah, I think that's the case in Hong Kong. Or Shadman can also share a bit about Bangladesh or what you have known in other regions.
Yeah, a very interesting learning from Bangladesh itself that so the very idea of social business and not social enterprise, social business, which is a business which will be solving a social problem. It's not voluntarily, it's not charity. It has to make money. It has to have a business model. But the idea is while solving the social problem, the profit made has to be reinvested into the business. So it keeps the economy within the business and it keeps it running, often not required for a lot of funding from external factors because the profit is reinvested. So this idea was started by Professor Muhammad Yunus, a Bangladeshi Nobel laureate, and the idea was tested across Bangladesh, and the idea of microcredit and social business pretty much started from a small village in the very southern part of Bangladesh, which is a bit close to Myanmar. Huge poverty problem after the independence of the country. So starting from there, currently there's a huge good movement, I would say, not just in Bangladesh, overall in South Asia and Southeast Asia, that social business and social impact is a thing, and the social entrepreneurs are coming up. I would say there was a gap in the middle when especially say Bangladesh or some other South Asian countries were struggling to grow. So the business was the only way to grow. We had to make profit, not thinking much about the impact. But as the economies have turned right now, new generations like us, ours are coming in who have seen both inside and outside. And we are getting into social impact, maybe in social business model or whatever we are trying to do, we're trying to have a social impact with it. I think it's a great movement, beginning not just here in our Asian region. Also, we see a great example in North America, and in Europe and in Africa as well, from our experience of Good City Foundation. So yeah, that's my sharing or my feedback, Andre. Anyone else would like to add to it from the crowd, because we have a few minutes to end, and oh, we have the contacts of mine and Andres in the screen. Also, you can just search us on Good City Foundation on Facebook, or with our names on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Because in the foundation, we have a lot to do with the young people as well, often as internships, often as participating in the programs. So we would love to keep the conversation running from here and onwards. So if anyone is interested to get in touch with us, feel free to mail us, or I'll also leave my WhatsApp here. So yeah, while wrapping up, maybe Andre or she or anyone, any feedback or comment. That's pretty much from my end, actually. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, Shadman. Again, appreciate everyone's attendance, and also thank you, SMU and also Shaka for organizing this event. Thank you, Shiting, for organizing, supporting this. I personally enjoyed the chat a lot, and hope to get connected over email or LinkedIn. And yeah, that's hopefully you all enjoy the rest of the program, and keep in touch, and also see you all in Singapore. Thank you, Shadman.
Thank you, Andre. Over to you, Shi.